What the hell is wrong with you? The only thing that's ever been consistent in my life is that question. Welcome to the ADHD Untangled podcast. My name is Rosie Turner and I'm an accredited ADHD coach, yoga and Pilates instructor. But ultimately, I'm just a human being who knows what it feels like to live with ADHD. And after having 8 failed driving tests, impulsive decisions to get married and then divorce before the age of 27, and having an inability to handle any form of rejection, I've decided to dedicate my life to supporting the ADHD community. And this podcast will cover the two things that I love to talk about most: movement and ADHD. You will hear real life stories from real people living with ADHD. You will get advice from wellness industry and ADHD experts. So what are you waiting for? Let's get untangled and show the world what we are made of. Welcome. Can you please tell us who the hell you are? And this is probably, out of all the guests I've had to ask this to, the most important question for you in particularly. What is your life's mission at the moment?
I love the question as well. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Kit Birks, and I'm a writer, activist, and adventurer. My life purpose at the moment is to make a lot of noise around suicide prevention and support for those struggling with their mental health. And yeah, my main mission at the moment is to make sure that we speak about these topics that need to be spoken about in order to save people's lives, because we won't save people's lives if we don't talk about it. So my mission at the moment is to make sure that people don't feel alone or misunderstood, and they realise that there is light there and life there, and people that they can turn to if they're struggling.
A mission and such an important message to share. So honestly, I only found out about Kit's story. I think it was like 2 days ago. Did I reach out to you? Can't remember. And I was like, oh my God, I need to talk to this wonderful, incredible human being. So tell us a little bit around why this is your mission and what, and how you are going about doing that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's a cause really, really close to my heart. For all my life, really, for all my real sort of all my memories growing up were all centered around mental illness from a really, really young age. From the age of 12, I started to suffer with depression and insomnia and self-harm. I was put on antidepressants when I was 13, and then throughout my teenage years, I was really unwell with anorexia and bulimia. And then I kind of started to recover from that, and then I slipped into addiction. And although it wasn't very obvious at first, it was just sort of like, oh, a teenager who takes it a bit too far, who was just a bit of a party girl. After a traumatic event in my early 20s, things just started to spiral out of control more and more and more. And over the course of just under a decade, it landed me homeless, suicidal, tried to take my own life multiple times. And I blew up everything in my life, like absolutely everything in my life. I hurt those I loved. I ran away from my family. They didn't know if I was dead or alive for a year. And I was just in this place of complete pain, and I didn't understand why I couldn't navigate life like other people could. And it was a real journey. And I was really lucky enough to find recovery for addiction in June of 2022. And I went to a meeting on the 2nd of June and have luckily remained clean and sober since that date. But it was in recovery that I got diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 27. And things really started to make sense for the first time. And I always remember like going into this room to see a psychiatrist and not knowing what I was going in there for, but I knew that something was wrong. As I saw, I was broken and there was something wrong with me. And I was in there for 5 minutes, and he did a ADHD assessment, and he's like, score of like perfect ADHD. And for the first time in my life, someone reached across the table and said, you must be so proud of yourself for getting this far, not knowing that this is what you had. Like, And for all of my life up until that point, I just felt like a problem, just like a problem. Like, you're the broken one in the family. You're the one that messes up time and time again. You're the one that can't seem to live normally. Why can't you get a job and hold it down? Why can't you regulate your emotions? We never know what we're going to get with you. You're just disruptive. And yeah, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And I'm not saying it was anybody's fault, not mine, not my family's, not my loved ones. We just weren't given the right tools. We weren't given the right information or educated properly to be shown this is what could be wrong, or this is how your brain functions, and it's different to other people. It doesn't mean that you're broken. So yeah, the ADHD diagnosis brought a lot of relief. And then I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder a year after that as well. And so finally, all these pieces of the jigsaw were coming together, and I was suddenly given this toolkit. And I was like, right, okay, I've kind of survived without knowing what these things are, but now I know what they are. I can really start to thrive because I can figure out how my brain works and what this means for me and how I can live with it. But I also made a vow that I don't want anybody else to go through 27 years of feeling the way I did, of feeling like they didn't belong, like they were broken, like they were misunderstood, and basically going down a whole world of pain and destruction. How can I catch this before anyone else has to go through the same? And it started out with advocacy. So I started to share openly online through TikTok and Instagram. And I also started to share poetry, which is something I started writing in recovery for drug addiction as a way to sort of make sense of emotions that I found really hard to understand. And over the course of the last 3 years, that sort of started to build traction. But then I just got to a point recently where I just thought, like, how much more talking can I do? Like, advocacy is amazing. We need to advocate. But I was like, I want to see real change. Why is there so much censorship around words like suicide? Why is that censored? Why is that deemed a bad word? Like, things need to change. We need to talk about it more. And so this idea to walk the length of Europe and what I've now named Stride Beyond Silence was born. And yeah, and so that's kind of how I've got to this point in a quite a big nutshell there. Um, but yeah, that's what been my journey and why I'm here now.
Thank you so much for perfectly explaining your story. And I know that personally, I relate to so much of what you said, and so many other people will listening to that. And I think that internal message hits so hard, that self-hatred of the messages that we hear, like, why is everything a problem? You're making life hard for yourself. Getting that message from the world, being constantly told that who you are is wrong, and how isolating that can be and detrimental to someone's life. I think you've brought so much attention to how important a diagnosis is, gets the difference between someone still being here and not, and if they are still being here, actually living their life instead of just existing in addiction or whatever it is they're trying to do to numb that pain and that story that we're telling ourselves, that who we are is not enough and what is wrong with me, and we don't have the answers, so we don't know what to do, so we just end up in these situations that where we're just existing.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think, this podcast started as a podcast around stories of struggle to strength, and I think your story speaks perfectly to that, actually, is how we can be in the depths of struggle, but we can find strength, and what we can do with that, and then we can empower others to do the same. And I know we was talking about this offline, is that you had people mention, why do you talk about your past so much? Because there's people in the midst of that right now, and they need to see your story and hear where you've been, because it's like you said, people can be online and showing where they're at now, and people can see that, but those that are in the depths of addiction or suicidal thoughts, whatever it is they're going through, they don't know where you've been unless you talk about it or do something about it and start mentioning where you've come from.
100%.
And then they have the hope, and that's what this is all about, is bringing hope to those that are in the depths of their struggle. Now, what I would love to know is, how much of this do you think, like the addiction side of things and having suicidal thoughts, is to do with your ADHD diagnosis, being late diagnosed? Like, how much of it do you think, if you've had that diagnosis earlier, could have been prevented?
I I do think that a lot of it could have been prevented. I definitely don't want to sit here and regret and of what I didn't have, but I think things would have been different. Things would have
Yeah.
been different because you know there's a lot of people that I know that have been are addicts in recovery as well that have an ADHD diagnosis. Like the correlation between the two is really, really quite high because it's
Huge.
that self-medication. It's, we're missing dopamine and norepinephrine from our brain. Like we get quick hits of dopamine from drugs and alcohol, but then we don't have the ability to refill it ourselves because we don't have that backstore to bring it back in. And so it's just rinse and repeat to try and get that again and again and again. And that kind of behavior repeats itself because we're trying to refill our dopamine that we don't actually carry in us. So we don't have enough storage of it. But I think, yeah, a lot of it was that just the mixture of the mental illness that can come with ADHD as well, and the kind of not being able to regulate my emotions and finding emotions actually really quite scary as well. So like alcohol and drugs are again really great at numbing that out completely. So I think an earlier diagnosis would have and could have prevented a lot. And I just think for me growing up at at school, I never ever heard the word ADHD. And if I did, it was always linked to like really naughty, like schoolboys. That was the only way I thought of ADHD. I didn't know what it looked like. And I didn't think that someone like me would ever have ADHD because, maybe I wasn't disruptive and disorderly, but there were other things going on that now I look back at it, I'm like, that's quite clearly someone that had ADHD. Um, yeah, so I think a lot of it could have been, and with the, it's quite difficult because I got the bipolar diagnosis as well. So again, I think both of those things could have, if I
Yeah.
knew back then, could be prevented. But yeah,
Well, it's just being able to understand your brain, isn't it? And having that information. And I'm so glad because again, for me, a lot of people have different information when they get diagnosed, there's different things that hit them the most and change. I think, there's different things within a diagnosis that give an explanation to an individual at that time, whatever it is, the story they're telling themselves. But mine was similar to your, where it's like, the addictive behavior being quite, I call it can't stop, won't stop ADHD, where it was literally like I had to do something all the time to slow myself down. And we live in a world where it is built for us to be addicted to these things, right? Like not only have we got less dopamine in our brain, but we live in a world where there's things created to keep, even our phones, for example, to keep us addicted. So there's more unhealthy, bad dopamine available to us in a lot quicker ways. And I think the great realization around understanding that ADHD is related to dopamine can really allow the world to hopefully start to view addiction in a completely different lens of a lot more self-love and compassion. And, I always say understanding versus judgment, because there's nothing like, you've just told your story around and all you could hear was judgment anyway,
yeah,
before the addiction, during the addiction, but having more judgment when you've reached for something that actually is just self-medicating because you don't know what else to do to numb that pain. The last thing we need is to be outcasted even more. So I think having this science, people can't really argue with the science because it's there, can really help shift the narrative that we're being told in this world. What I really loved as well that you mentioned is about the blame side of things. You said it's not about now saying, oh, no one missed, everyone missed it and it's a blame game. But what I think was so powerful about what you said is, but it wasn't my fault. Now, to be able to say that now after what you just said, how your life was and everything felt like it was your fault, because I say that self-hatred runs so deep within us. How does it feel to be able to say that now after years of blaming yourself?
it does feel amazing because, oh, I hated myself so much, so much. I just, there was nothing but hate for myself. And I think that came from not understanding why my brain I couldn't even relate it to my brain. It was just me. Why am I like this? Why am I that way? Why am I this way? And, with that as well, especially with addiction, there was also so much stuff I did that I thought I was going to take to my grave. The lies, the manipulation that comes with that. And I think not knowing why I was hurting so many people, because I kept on thinking, I really don't think I'm a bad person, but why am I doing all this like
Yeah.
bad stuff? Why am I being so destructive? I can't understand that. And I think when I got into recovery and I was suddenly, and with the diagnosis and stuff, I was, as I said, given this toolkit. And I was also, especially through recovery from addiction, I was given this amazing lens into other addicts who are also in recovery, and that they had this capacity to get honest with themselves and actually start saying things out loud. And that's what I started to do. So I was actually able to start admitting what I'd done, to myself and to others, and realizing like, okay, I don't need to hide away anymore about anything. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I was someone who was deeply, deeply unwell. Um, and so, yeah, over the last 3 years, I've sort of unpacked all of those lies and all of the trauma, and tried to deal with that. And so with that has kind of come ability to look at myself in the mirror in a different light and with more compassion. I feel like I've carved a lot of compassion for the me that didn't know, for the me that
Yeah.
didn't understand what was wrong. Um, and I still have to find that fine balance though of compassion and understanding and not blaming myself, but also being accountable for the actions that I did do.
Mm.
Because I can't just say, but I had ADHD, I had bipolar, so I hurt you, but I was unwell. I still need to be accountable to the people that I hurt, but hopefully I can address it in a way that is coming from a place of compassion for myself and being like, by the way, so yeah, it's finding that balance. I never wanted my diagnoses to suddenly be this falling into the victim role, which I played so well for so long. So yeah, but it's so nice to like not blame myself for these things anymore.
It's so true. And actually what you've described is, I mean, I haven't met really many ADHDers that don't get a diagnosis and go, right, I want to get a coach, obviously, because a lot of them are ended up coaching with me at the time. But like people want to use it as an explanation and not an excuse. And actually, I think there's such an importance here because so many people that don't understand ADHD, it gets a lot of bad rep, but like it really can help that victim mentality. Like you said, before the diagnosis, we can be in the victim mode because we don't understand what's going on. So we're like, well, it must be me, but it also must be because of my environment and the people around me. Like because we're not aligned, we're not tuning into who we are. And actually, I really view, when I think of my addictive past, and I don't know if you agree, but it was a masking,
Yeah,
right? You're
100%.
masking who you are, so you're disconnected from who you really are. And actually, I think what you've again perfectly described that a diagnosis can bring you is a connection to others, but a connection to yourself. And actually, you can't connect with the world if you're disconnected from yourself.
Yeah, yeah, completely. And I think there was just all these years of just like, who am I? And
Yeah.
actually, I felt like I was this malleable person. Like, if
Yeah.
if I spent time with people that loved, I don't know, like drum and bass and the color blue, I loved drum and bass and the
Me
color
too.
blue. And then it would be like, and then I'd spend time with people that was like, I love heavy metal and I don't know, whittling wood, and I'd be like, yes, so do I.
It's
And it was
so
like
true. And I mean, you just
100%.
you start dressing like them, using words like them, like even accents. I was saying to someone the other day, I was like, literally used to like put on accents. I remember I went to like Liverpool for like, so I was talking like trying to talk scouse. I'm like, what the hell? You become these chameleons and like mimicking everybody because you have no clue. You're so disconnected. You don't know who you are. You haven't even really asked the question properly because you're like, I don't even know who that is or where to even start. So I'll
Yeah,
just be like you and I'll just do this. And that's what's dangerous in that. And actually, like, again, like we said about the science behind addiction, but also it can be just the masking in itself. And then all of a sudden we've done what someone else is doing because we don't really know who we are, we want to fit in. We've
mm,
also got the lower amounts of dopamine. Next thing you know, we're in the depths of real addiction. So there's so
yeah,
many factors to it, isn't there, that
yeah.
can lead us down that road. And I want to ask you because it seems like you're quite connected to the recovery, and you've got community there, and you said people within that community that have ADHD diagnosis. How much is there a lot being done around ADHD in those communities, like signposting or support? Do you know?
There's a lot. There's an amazing community to help people in recovery from addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. I don't know if there's enough signposting being done with the correlation between addiction and ADHD. And I think that there needs to be, in general, more work done, especially for
Definitely.
young girls, to say, okay, let's actually break things down here. Okay, why have they got anxiety and depression or an eating disorder, and have they got addictive behaviors? Are these all things happening, or is this ADHD? Is this something that can kind of explain everything under one roof? Because, I think that for women, a lot of the time, our ADHD can present very, very differently. And, I was told when I got my diagnosis by the doctor I had, he said, well, this would explain a lot of the other mental health problems, as well as the bipolar and
The
stuff.
doctor sounds amazing who diagnosed you, by the way.
He was, he was absolutely incredible. Genuinely, I've never had someone look at me, and now I get it more. But for someone to literally just look at you and he didn't say the words, "It's not your fault," but that's sort of the illusion, what he alluded to was like, "Well done, you've actually got here." And I was like, "Yeah, it was amazing."
I really wish everyone had that experience when they got diagnosed, because I do think we wait our entire lives to just feel that. And that must have made a huge difference on the steps you've taken since. I would
Yeah,
expect that, because again, we always talk about aftercare and the right words. Well, mine was very different. Mine was like, well, what do you think this is going to change for your life? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it
is that what
means.
you're
And
supposed to
I,
tell me?
I was like, I don't know. So I think that's, again, like, it just shows you the difference in the reactions you can get and how quickly someone can then go and like get on with and change the directory of their lives. But I think you're so right. The signposting for all of that, connecting the dots, because it'd save a lot of time and a lot of different appointments. Like, how many times have you gone in, to get support for, like you say, when you're struggling with your mental health, and then separately you're going for an eating disorder, and then you have addiction, you're going for addictive behaviors and all of this stuff, but it all connects. And I know people talk a lot about going to the root, don't they, of the problem, and a lot of people refer to like trauma in that sense, but actually ADHD, I believe, can be at the root of a lot of it, of all of it.
Sometimes ADHD can be the cause of trauma.
Exactly.
You do.
Exactly that.
It's like the chicken and the egg. Which one's first? Is it the ADHD or the trauma and then the ADHD? Because you don't think it's the compulsive behavior. Again, it's the drugs, it's the drinking, getting yourself into bad situations.
And then
It's
you're
that way.
traumatized. Exactly.
Yeah.
And also the parents that don't know they've got ADHD or haven't known they've got ADHD. So if you are brought up in an environment when you're younger and you've had trauma, a lot of that can also be to do with the fact that people have been missed
Yeah.
because they've got addictive behaviors, or you're born into an environment where someone is struggling with their mental health and they don't know why, and it's actually related to ADHD. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Sorry to interrupt, but are you getting bored of the mundane? Doing the same old thing day in, day out? Me too. It's not good for the old ADHD, that. And that's why I'm running away to the mountains this September to host another ADHD retreat. And I would love you to come. From the 11th to the 15th of September, we are heading to the French Alps, home of the Tour de France, for 5 whole bloody days. And this isn't your typical retreat, because you're not typical. So whether you want to hike mountains at sunrise or sleep through breakfast, there is no right way to do this. All you need to do is come as you are and be as you are. So if you fancy untangling your ADHD with me in the magical mountains this September, head over to untangledco.com. and let's get out of here. So let's talk about your amazing challenge that you are doing. You said, the writing has been an amazing way that you've been spreading the word, and, you've been an amazing advocate. What challenge are you now taking on for a whole year? In how many days are you leaving? 2 days? 1 day?
Well, I'm currently in Oslo.
Okay, so you're at a starting point.
I'm at getting there. So I flew into Oslo this morning, staying here tonight, and then flying up to Alta tomorrow, which is really far north. and then driving to a little fishing village called Skarsvåg, and then on the Monday morning going up to Nordkapp in Norway, northernmost point in Norway, and starting the walk. So I'm walking the length of Europe,
God.
all in the name of suicide prevention. So the challenge is called Stride Beyond Silence, and it's a track to put mental health on the map. It's the first continuous solo trek of its kind, so I'm doing it completely solo and unsupported, kind of carrying everything I need in a rucksack. Tent and everything.
How big is this rucksack? Is it like Mary Poppins rucksack?
Genuinely, well, it's actually really good. But this rucksack I've got, I had another one that was awful, but I've been very lucky to have the wonderful people at Montaigne sponsor me, and their rucksack is so good. It fits so much into it, and it's actually quite small.
Wow.
But it's quite heavy. So with it, when it's full of food and water, it's just under 20 kilograms. So
You're getting a bit of heavy weight lifting on the way as
yeah,
well.
that's been the main bit of training is to keep up piling on the load on my back, just to make sure I can actually do that. And obviously then like stretching and fitness and cardio and stuff. But the main thing has been going out on walks and slowly building up that weight that I'm carrying, because it's quite heavy. So yeah, so I'm aiming to be the first person to do this. There's been no documentation of anybody going from the northernmost to the southernmost point on by foot. But yeah, so I started Nordkapp, Norway, and then going to this tiny island off Greece called Gavdos, and I should be on the road for a year, walking. But yeah, the main aim is to make a lot of noise around suicide prevention. And I'm doing it for two charities. One is Calm, which is Campaign Against Living Miserably, who they've helped me with their helplines, and they do amazing work around suicide prevention, not only for the people who are going through suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts, but also supporting families who have lost loved ones to suicide, which I think is really, really important. And then the other charity I'm doing it for is ADHD, set up by my friend Georgina Banks, who has autism and ADHD. And it's looking at preventing suicides within the demographic of people that have autism and ADHD. And just really hoping to speak about it, to really speak about suicide. Because I found with this trek, the more that it's built up in exposure through press or media, there's been loads of media that have said, oh, we love what you're doing, we support it, but we don't want to go down the suicide angle. And it's just like,
God.
there's no other angle. I've also been told suicide doesn't sell unless it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I was like, okay, I'll just phone up suicide and say, be on hold for the rest of the year. Just like crazy stuff. But it's all being fueled to the fire. And again, it's no one's fault. It's just what our society is currently being told, that it's a bad word. It's you can't talk about it, but we need to talk about it, because otherwise how are we going to prevent it? So yeah, the more that this has progressed, this trek, even before I've begun it, the more I realized how much further we have to go on this topic. And
I'm absolutely shocked by that, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then this is like big this is like well-known media places as well, and you just think there is no other angle to this. Like, this is the angle, and we need to talk about it. And why is it a bad or dirty word when actually it's how I described it on a recent post? Like, it's the terminal outcome of mental illness. Just like if someone dies of cancer, death is their terminal outcome. It's just why is it a bad thing to say? So I'm really hoping to change that, but mainly hoping to raise loads of money for charity, who do the amazing work, and just get conversations going. I'm carrying a flag which has the names of people on it that we've lost to suicide, and it's currently got 175 names, and there's still another about 100 that I've got to add. So there's still quite a lot to go on, but it's all about, basically, I want it to just be like a vessel for the cause. I'm trying to get people's stories involved and trying to get as many people involved as possible, because it's this whole thing. It's really not about me. It's about something so much bigger and changing something so much bigger. So I'm just hoping it will do that, and it seems to already being slowly doing it already. So just really hoping it can make a difference.
Do you think that this is more of a UK thing than because do you think the press across Europe might be different with the conversation? Do you think it's a UK thing?
I'm going to be really intrigued to see. There was someone from Sweden that reached out, a broadcaster from Sweden that reached out and said, oh, we'd love to talk about this. It's a really important cause. But I would love to see how it does progress, because I know that I still think in a lot of places it's still something that's not spoken about. And we have done so amazingly in the last decade on the way that we speak about mental health but a lot of it is
Talk.
it's talk, and it's quite a polished version of mental health. It's not actually going into the real nitty gritty of mental illness. And yeah, that's uncomfortable to hear, but if we don't hear it, then how are we going to help it? So I think it's just something that really needs to be spoken about, because yeah.
And I think it's so like you say, it's like we find these vehicles, you're using your creativity, your place of strength actually as a vehicle to bring more meaning to your own life, but also create change in the wider world and do something really positive with that. And I think that is so remarkable for you to do. So what I want to talk about is with everything you've done, whether it's been your online, sharing your online advocacy, your poetry, and now this challenge, this massive mission that you're on. I always say with ADHD that, it will always be a struggle, but there's always a strength to be found. Did you say you're just ADHD diagnosis, or you've also got autism as well?
Just ADHD.
Just ADHD. So where have you seen ADHD show up as a struggle and a strength in your recovery?
So I think one thing that's been a real struggle, and I've only started to really being able to notice it in a positive way, which means I can actually voice it, is how my emotional dysregulation, and how overly stimulated I can get, and that I can actually shut down quite easily. And I didn't realize that was ADHD related. So kind of go from all and be like really, everything, and then being basically mute and not really knowing how to express myself, and just completely shutting down. So I found that like a struggle, but I feel like the strengths of ADHD are the fact that once you find your purpose, and once you find something that you're really passionate about, you're unstoppable. Like it's insane. Like I was a former nurse, so before I started doing this, I
Wow.
was a former nurse. And I loved nursing, but I couldn't understand why at some points I would just be like, I really don't want to go into work. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, and then there would always be a point where I'd have to chop and change to a different job or whatever. And I could never stick it out. I'd get bored, and I'd just be like, oh, I'd be like, this is so annoying. Like, why is this happening? But with the advocacy, and like wanting to make a change in something I'm passionate about, like, there is just no stop. It's almost like you're constantly pushing through the ceiling of what you realize you can do. It's insane, because there's just so much being fueled into this. And I realize, like, it's not about being broken or not broken. It's about finding what works for you. Maybe the normal 9 to 5 isn't something that's going to work for you, but something will. And yeah, and I think also, because what ADHD has given me, which was a lifetime of maybe not so great experiences, it's definitely given me resilience I didn't realize I had. It's definitely given me empathy for others that maybe I otherwise wouldn't have had. And it's given me what I have today. I don't regret anything now. Like, I don't regret any of my past. Of course, there are days where it's harder, and there's still traumatic things that I'm facing to heal from, but I wouldn't take any of it back, because I'm really grateful for it now, because it's shaped me. Like, your darkness does shape you, and I used to be so scared of darkness. I used to only want light, but now I'm like, well, you can't get one without the other. They don't exist without each
It
other.
doesn't, no.
So yeah, it's about, like, I've learned how to love my darkness just as much as I love my light, which is really, really important, especially with bipolar as well. Like, got to learn to love both and show yourself compassion in both. So yeah.
That, and I think that's such an important message to share. I actually shared something similar with the coaching group today, which they were talking about in terms of their career, but I was saying that you have to be willing to embarrass yourself for a while to get anything meaningful from what it is you're doing. Otherwise, and it's the same with like failing or experiences. And I always say, like, things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us a lot of the time. If we can stick around long enough to get curious about what that is, then we can do
Yeah.
something pretty special, right? With
Yeah.
what it is that's going on. And I think for people listening that might not be at the stage where they can see any strength right now, that's such a hopeful message to share.
Yeah, I think the biggest turning curve uh, for me with these diagnoses, it happened because I found it quite hard to accept bipolar, and I found it really scary. Like, looking online, like, all of this stuff was like my battle with this, my like struggle. Same with ADHD, like the struggles of having ADHD, the battles of having ADHD, and it was just like, well, both of these things are like long term, that you have them forever. They're not curable, but you can manage them, you can treat them. And so to battle something for your whole life sounds so like exhausting. And so I just made this like conscious decision to welcome both things in like a friend, and just realize, okay, like, what are you going to teach me? Like, and the same with like any friendship, the more you get to know each other, the more you realize what that means for you. Like, you then start to understand the mannerisms of that friend and like what you're going to
So
go through.
true.
And it's suddenly becomes so much less scary. And I'm like, actually, do you know what? You're not even a separate to me. You're part of me. And I'm not going to battle that part. I'm not going to struggle with that part. I'm going to learn what it looks like for me, welcome it in, and realize, like, how can we get stronger through this? Like, what are you going to teach me? Because yeah, it was horrible at the beginning. I was like, oh, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to be able to move forward with it, and I'm going to be battling it all the time. And it's just like changing the language. There was so much negative language around these diagnoses when I first looked into it.
I know so much. Literally, it's all I heard. And I was just like, and you can get, and obviously with a brain that is wired to have a stronger negative bias the most, even though we've all got a stronger negative bias, but with ADHD, it's even more so. It can be quite dangerous, I think, for a diagnosis. Like, again, when you go for your diagnosis, the majority of the diagnosis process, unless you have an amazing doctor like yours, is all the things you can't do and all the ways you're going to struggle. But there is no mention of, well, do you know what? You might be able to, this might be a place of strength for you. This is what we see, or this is what you could do with what you have. Because ultimately, by fighting and battling it, we're not going to get anywhere. We're actually just going to
It's also
be
going to be
stuck.
exhausting.
Yeah, it's bloody exhausting. It is
Exhausting.
exhausting. But the problem is, I think what you spoke about there, and what I try to do a lot of clients, and especially with addictive behavior, is, there is so much stimulation in a negative story and in, for example, an addictive substance or whatever it is that you are using to self-medicate, that actually I often say to clients, I'm not going to focus on getting you off weed or the computer. That's not my focus. My focus is to get you something that is more stimulating and more meaningful, that isn't harming you. Because if we focus on the thing you're not allowed to have, it's going to become more stimulating. And I think you've done a great job of that. You found something more important. And mine was exercise, right? Mine was yoga. And that became more important than the drink and the drugs. And eventually, without really paying attention to the drink and the drugs, it just sort of started to feel less important and slipped away gradually over time, because that became the most important thing. Which brings me to the question around exercise, because obviously this is a physical challenge, right?
Yeah.
And I am such a big advocate for getting our community moving in any way I can. So tell us about, how has this training for this, massive challenge, has that had a positive impact on your ADHD, and how?
Oh, hugely. I mean, exercise in general is just amazing for it. I've always been, well, I've always been someone that's loved running and gym, and that slipped away when addiction got really bad. But as soon as I got into recovery, it was like my lifeline. It was just the running as well. I don't like to run with people. I hate running with people. That's
Me
just,
too. I
I'm
can't
like,
bear it.
I like, no, because
I
you're
don't
gonna
even like working out with people, really.
why me?
Yeah.
Um,
How
but
can you, but how can they run and talk at the same time? I never
I,
understand anyway. I'm like, God.
like, no, I just want to listen to some music and shut up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, training for this has been amazing because nature to me, I absolutely love it. And I think for same with the ADHD for years and years and years, not knowing who you are. When I first started to recovery, after I detoxed and I, started my meetings up and things like that, I was going outside all the time. And like nature became this higher power for me where just like it took away everything. It asked no questions. It didn't need anything from me. I could scream into the wind and it wouldn't answer back. It would just be
I
there.
love that. Yeah.
And it would just be like, okay, like this is amazing. And I just got obsessed with nature and being outside and that reconnection and realizing everything about nature is just how we are. Like that's why every time I go through bad times, I'm like, this is wintering. And like trees have to winter just so they can grow better leaves and greener leaves and different leaves. So do we. We go back under soil. We have a little time under there just so then we can grow back through the mud and the brambles to flower again. And each time is different, but we learn something new and we come back stronger. So it was this reconnection with nature. And I think with training for this trek, it's meant more time outside and more connection. And I've really loved that. And I'm really excited about being out in nature and just yeah, the movement. It's just being able to move your body and one of my biggest gratitudes every day is, God, I'm so lucky that I have a body that moves. So why
Oh,
not?
me too. It's my first thing I thank for. Exactly. Do you know what I say to my clients is a little mindset shift is, instead of saying I've got to go and do this run or I've got to go to the gym or whatever it is, I always say choose something that's fun, whatever movement it is. But I get to when so many others don't. And that has been a game changer for me who love to exercise. But some mornings, I'm still have the battle in my head 10 years later of like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And then I change it to I get to. And I think it's just like that simple rephrase, isn't it? Of like, actually, this is a privilege. And I think that's the most important
100%.
thing.
Yeah, I think it can change the whole way you view anything. It's
Yeah.
just, and my mum is amazing. She always like says that when I start freaking, especially about this challenge, she's like, "You get to do this. Like you get
Yeah.
to do
I
this."
love it.
And she's been amazing as well because like I've had to get stronger for this, and it meant for me as someone who, even though I was anorexic age ago, still has a bad brain. I've had to bulk up and put on a bit of weight and that was terrifying. And your mom was like, "But this body can do this. Your body's how it was a year ago wouldn't have been able to do this. Like you get to do this because you've made yourself strong." And I was like, that changed everything for me. I was like, yeah, that's so true. Like I get to do this. Like it's a privilege, basically. It's always a good mindset shift.
It's such an important topic to mention. And actually, if you don't mind us talking about that for a bit, it is the eating disorder thing. Because again, I'm currently recovering from HA, which is, where you lose your periods. I don't know if you went through that with your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually today, before I come on this call, this is so weird. So honestly, I feel like actually crying because before I come on this call, after over 3 years, I haven't had a period. And I've just had, because I've been having to put on weight and go through this whole process of, which is why when you said it's terrifying, I think it's very hard to get rid of that narrative when you've had an eating disorder, right? No matter how far you've come. But I just had my first bleed just literally before we come on this call, 15 minutes before we got on. I rung my mum and my
Oh
sisters
my
on a group
God.
thing, and I was like,
Oh my
but I
God.
but I think it's really important for you to talk about this because you've had to put on and get stronger and put on weight, and you've still had that narrative in your head, but having a stronger why behind it.
Yeah.
Again, I think with ADHD or any human being, when we are struggling with something that is harming us, to have a bigger why means we can start to overcome that
Yeah.
story and narrative. And that's going to stay with you. The fact you've been able to do this in this moment, get
Yeah.
stronger, put on weight, you're going to be able to sort of make a bit of a, I suppose, a rewiring in your brain
Yeah,
as you.
I'm really hoping so. Like it's been really hard. I've always been someone that's like, even when I've been good in my recovery with it, I've always been someone that's small.
Mm.
It is small and people just notice that. Like, oh, you're just a small person. Even though I might not notice it because the body just small for you, it definitely doesn't go away.
Oh God, no.
So it's been really, and it's just, and I never talk about it with most people because I'm like, I'm doing this thing I don't want to talk about how, but that's
It's
just
so
important.
important
Like
because
it's
that is mental health, isn't it? It's all
yeah,
related.
And even though I know that I've done it because I'm going to be burning so many calories that's going to be hard to fuel up. So I didn't want to. It's given me more of a buffer before I start going down, but it's still been really hard, and it's still just been like. And then I felt guilty. I've been like, why? Why
Yeah,
is this one of my biggest worries in my own head? Is,
exactly.
oh my word, people are going to judge me, but no one's thinking about it. No one.
No one.
It's our own head. But I'm still thankful that I've been able to do it, and I didn't get silly and be like, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. I've been like, no, and I would not have been able to do that, when I was in the midst of it. But yeah, I think as you said, like, no matter how far we come, it doesn't fully go away. I think some people I know have been able to fully get rid of it, and I'm like, one day, so that gives me hope. But
Yeah,
for me, like, and as you were saying, like, it's still something that doesn't fully go. There's always that critical brain, and the body is
definitely.
still there, no matter what.
But like everything you're doing, again, it's something that shouldn't be silenced. And I had the same girl. I'm like a coach, and this is why I wouldn't take on somebody because they had a eating disorder was the main thing they were coming to me for. I recommended them to someone else, and it brought a light to that. Actually, I need to deal with this, and I think the guilt that comes, I knew that I might not be able to have children. That they were giving me heart scans, brain scans, but I still was crying because I'd put on a stone and
I
not going
know.
out all weekend because it was boiling hot the other weekend. I wouldn't leave the house. And you feel guilty, and it's hard for others around you to understand
Yeah.
something that feels very superficial and, unimportant, which we know it isn't the depth of who we are. But when you're in the, that's such a strong narrative and something that's so hard to rewire.
And also, I think what people don't realize, like, is not, it starts as wanting to be thin, but then it's just this like parasitic disorder that takes over everything, your
Everything.
ability
Yeah.
to do anything and everything. And it's suddenly not about, you get scared of putting on weight, but it's not about wanting to look good. It's fear. It's just
Yeah.
such big, controlling, horrendous fear. And it's just like, it's hard. It's so hard to explain, isn't it? And like,
It really
you
is.
think people are gonna people think that they can scare you into eating, going, but you're gonna die, like you're not gonna have children, like you're gonna like, and it doesn't matter. Like
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. Like,
No.
it didn't matter. And I mean, that's why it's so. I mean, anorexia is the biggest killer in mental health, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the judgment, isn't it? Because people, if that isn't something you've struggled with, people cannot really, if people can't understand it, then it can be seen as like judgment and quite an easy thing to, oh, why don't you just eat, for example. Um, how are you planning on? Because obviously, like you said, you're going to be burning a lot of calories. Now, I know in my head it would be like, right, great, I'm going to be burning. I know that narrative would still be there. How are you? Have you thought about that? Like how to keep an eye on disordered
Yeah.
eating along the way?
Yeah. I mean, I've been super lucky. One of my sponsors is a company called Peak Dynamics, and the guy that leads it is a guy called Sandy Lodder, and he's sponsoring by giving me, he's my mentor and coach. Um,
Wow.
and he just, no bullshit. He's ex-military. He's trained loads of expeditionists, adventurers to do world records. And like when I went on a big training hike in Scotland every day, he'd be like, you're not doing a London diet, fuel, fuel, fuel. He's like, and was always reassuring me, like, you're going to be burning more than you're eating. Like, no matter what you do, you're still going to be losing weight, but we don't, like, unless you want to not, he basically said, the biggest thing is that you won't complete it if you
Yeah.
beat yourself. And it's, you know, having that reminder from someone else that isn't family, that isn't friends, to be like,
Makes
uh,
such a difference, doesn't it?
makes such a difference. And I think, um, it's like eating things that are just that I know that I feel happy eating, and just making sure that it's a balance of like healthy but also high calorie food. So I'm not
Yeah.
eating loads and loads, but realizing, okay, what I'm putting in my body is nutritionally good. And yeah, just I think the biggest thing is the why. Like, okay, if I want to complete this, I can't be silly.
No.
I need to just constantly remind myself to keep fueling up.
That's why I do believe as well, especially with ADHD, our why needs to be bigger than us, because I think that for us that is more meaningful, and we need real meaning behind what we're doing. And when you said about the control thing as well, just going back to that, I think, yeah, like you said, it's not about how you look. It's about, I think, when you've lived with a brain that feels so out of control, we've constantly tried to find ways to feel in control. And I think our bodies and what we eat is one of the easiest things that we can turn to control. And I think that's when you start to have to change that, like you say, like eating more and eating things that I've never ever eat and having to eat them with every meal, like carbs or whatever it was that I had to start with. And it can feel like, well, it feels out of control. You feel out of control. And I think that's what it is. That's what's worrying. And you start to think everything's, it's like your brain's like, I'm out of control. Everything's falling apart. And what am I going
Yeah,
to do
it's
next?
again, then the ADHD is just like all over the shop because it's just
Yeah.
spiraling. You're like, no. And then you're like, I'm out of control
How do
because
I find control?
then you're actually, when I'm being controlled by trying to be in control. It's
Yeah,
difficult to balance. But I think, from what you're doing and having these conversations, there's also proof that we can have brains like ours and like we could have been through whatever we've been through, and it doesn't mean that we can't go on and do amazing things and like live a good life and
exactly.
help. And doing amazing things is just being able to get out of bed and like
Exactly.
live a life that you're happy to live.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what you're doing with it.
Having a breakfast with a piece of toast and not feeling guilty is an amazing thing sometimes,
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the little things in life.
Exactly. So let's go to final fire round. One word to describe ADHD.
One word.
Mhm.
I was about to say beautiful.
I've had someone use a hyphen before.
I'm gonna say it's one word to describe ADHD. That's
It's
hard.
hard, isn't it?
Um, Unpredictable.
I like it. Unpredictable. One word to describe how you feel about your challenge ahead today. How you feel today.
Today, no, I'm hopeful.
Yes, hopeful. What's the very first thing you'll do when you finish your hike?
Get a massage.
A well-deserved one. Um, if you could share one of your poems, what would it be and why?
There's a poem I wrote saying that's called "I'm so sorry, dying didn't work out for you," uh, and it's my favorite poem, and it's my own little entry basically of how I'm really glad that I was bad at dying because it meant that I got a second shot at living. And yeah, I've read it a few times to a few people, and it always seems to resonate to those that have been there. So that's my favorite poem. That's why I would share it.
I love that. If your ADHD had a soundtrack, what song would it be? By the way, if someone asked me this right now, I wouldn't know, so don't worry.
No, I actually love this. What would it be? It would be, what would be a good song? Give me a second. Yes.
You're allowed a second. Don't worry. Call a friend.
I was trying to think what I've been listening to recently that would like make me feel what's like a really good upbeat song. It would be something good. It would be something like really upbeat. Oh, let's just do. Oh, that's really hard. What is it for yours?
I think mine's going to be Don't Stop Me Now.
Oh, I'll do I'm Still Standing by Elton John.
Yes, I love that. I'm Still Standing by Elton John. Brilliant song. Right. So, the most important thing, how can we help you? How do people help you on your amazing mission?
Well, I always just love any kind of support. So if it can be commenting and just offering support through that. So you can follow me on social media. So Instagram and TikTok, I'll be doing daily updates through
And what's
those.
your Instagram and TikTok called?
It's at, and then it's Kit Birks, so KITBIRKS.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also the same username over on YouTube, where there's going to be regular episodes coming out. We're shooting regular episodes, so they're coming out every other week of the whole
Amazing.
challenge. And then also through the links in my bio on any of those, there's a place to donate to charity. So my GiveStar page will take you, if you want to donate to charity, do it through the GiveStar page. All of the money goes to charity.
Love it.
Which can do just incredible things to help people. That is it as well. Oh, and over on my website, you can share your story. So I'm going to be trying to share other people's stories there that they've been through, whether that's someone they've lost to suicide or what they've been through themselves, to bring people more into this. Yeah, that's sort of it, really. Oh, and also my poetry book comes out on the 25th of July. So
Amazing. What's it called?
it's called Burnt Toast.
Burnt Toast.
It's available on Amazon for pre-order at the moment.
Amazing. You're incredible. I'm so glad this was like one of those, when impulsivity pays off.
Yeah, I'm really, thank you so much for juggling. When I said, I'm going soon, I don't know if you can fit this in, and you were just like, yep, I'm going to juggle. This is amazing. I love it.
This is when ADHD finds solutions around things. But honestly, I feel so privileged to talk to you. You're an amazing human being, and I can't wait to see, how it all goes for you and how it plans out. But I'm so certain that this is going to be truly amazing. This is going to, make such a difference. You're already making a difference. So,
thank you so much, and thank
you're
you
amazing.
for all you're doing and for having me on. And it's been such a lovely time chatting with you. I've really loved it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on the ADHD Untangled podcast. I hope that these episodes are inspiring you to step forward with confidence despite the struggles that you face with ADHD. If you want to find out more about ADHD coaching, retreats, trainings, then check out my Instagram, ADHD_Untangled, or my website, untangledco.com. Let's get untangled and show the world what we are made of.